Today, we're going to try to see if we can wrap up that e-commerce store build and get it published. If everything plays nicely. I'm seeing some interesting behavior from the Claude models this morning, so that will be something we might get to experience for a moment. Can everybody see this Windsurf instance as well as Railway? Perfect. And I have high level pulled up here. We're going to use that for our webhook management. And in case we need it, we'll have the PRD tool up on the screen. Last week, we got Stripe integrated in the store so that we could run through and do a purchase. That series is now up on our YouTube channel. If anybody wants to go back and watch that and follow along and do it themselves, that is up there. But we have the checkout process built out and ready to roll there. But today, we're going to go and see if we can set up the order processing webhook and make sure we can send order information over to high level so we can send out receipts and things like that. And we're going to put it all together and publish it. Make sure Stripe actually works on production. Generally, there are some bugs to work out in that process. If all of that goes as planned, we will have a live store that can take orders at the end of the session. And if it doesn't go as planned, we'll extend it further. So let's dive right in. I'm going to query it just a little bit, bring some context in to the window here. And we're going to say, do not make changes. Please check and see what the webhook situation is, what exists, and what does it do versus what is stubbed out. We are going to use a new MCP that I'm building to review this information, provided it comes online. It's a little bit brand new, but it did its trick. It basically can look through and get the entire project structure really quickly and give this summary to the AI, which speeds up the process. And then that allows it to quickly drill down into pieces of the code and find matches in the code with line details. So it doesn't have to search very hard with its own tools, and it can quickly go and find lines that it needs to read. It found the send webhook on line 77. And then it went and just grabbed the context right up to that line without having to guess where in the file that was. Okay, Stripe webhook is there. CRM webhook is not. It did not find the environment file, and that's because it's in git ignore. Okay, so this is the one we want. Let's go ahead and set that up. Let's say it this way. We want the CRM webhook to send to our provided webhook in the environment variables. I know that's there from everything we've built here. That is right here. We have webhook URL as a variable. So put that in. And we're going to tell it, since it couldn't find the .env, we're going to tell it where it is. And then we will say, this should run every time an order is placed on the site. It needs to send all order details and line items, billing info, IP address. Let's see, is there anything else we need? Shipping address. If different, then the billing address. I'm telling it that because when you go to checkout here, you can set it the same as or leave it as billing and shipping separate. Say, look at how all this is stored in the database and how it's currently retrieved for the admin order management page. So you can see the formats. And we're going to have it use the Postgres MCP and the Smart Code MCP for this review. And we're going to tell it do not make changes so it can plan that out and send that through here. Get that loaded up. Looks like we've got a little bit of Windsurf grumpiness going on here. I was seeing this earlier today where Windsurf was freezing up. So we might switch over to Kilo code if that continues. We have the same models there. Here's what it found. It seems to be unable to see our environment file again. And this send to webhook function is stubbed out. Okay. So we're going to have it build out the send to webhook, the send to webhook function. Do not change anything else. Be sure to check and make the HTTPS request happen when an order is placed. This should trigger after the Stripe payment is made. So give it some specifics there. Do not make other changes. That at the end there, just because it's acting up a little bit today. And we'll see if this locks up again or if it's going to play nice. It's been acting up a little bit this morning. It says it has made this change. We are going to test this. First thing we're going to do is to test this is go over to high level. You could use Zapier for this. You could use N8N, anything that can catch a webhook. You can use, I use high level because it also operates as a CRM. So I can keep all of the customer info in there. I can send them promotional emails, things like that. So it gives me a full marketing backend for a store, not just a webhook capture. But you can do whatever you want there. We're going to add this trigger and grab ourselves a webhook. And this generates the webhook here. We are going to put that into the application. So we'll go to our environment file and replace this webhook here. And then we are going to restart the application because we made changes to some server-side files here that won't be picked up properly or often are not picked up properly without a restart. And we're going to do a test order and see if anything comes through. We're going to watch the logs, watch the console, and see what comes through on this test order. So we will refresh this, which will empty my cart out because we just restarted the site. And add this to a cart and check out. And then I still have the Stripe placeholder keys in here, the test keys, so we can choose test information. Okay, we'll keep that the same as the billing address. Here is our Stripe. And you can just put in any details that you want as long as the date is in the future here. And what we're looking for is to see if this order information got received by high level. We're going to fetch a request and it was sent over. So this is what was sent over from the webhook. We're going to check the details. So it has the name, email, order total, shipping address. Here's the item. Here's the image for the item. So we could just embed that image into their email that we send them for a confirmation. Has the IP address info, timestamp. Okay. So we basically have all of our order information here that we would need. And we can save that trigger and tell it to create a contact. And we would start with the email address because that is a unique field. So we grab our webhook trigger. This will be different depending on the platform you use. If you're not using high level, we'll grab the customer email and we will put their name in. Grab that from the webhook trigger. First name, and we will go to last name. Drop that in here. Okay. And that creates our contact. So we have the contact created when the webhook comes through. And then we won't go through a full design here. That would be an entirely different adventure, but I will just show you a little bit about what you could do with that. You'd set it up to send an email, and you would say something like Micro-Store, because that's the name of the store we have here. And we would say orders at Micro-Store, imagining that's our domain. And we would say your for order. And then if we grab this trigger, I think it had an order number, order ID right there. So now we've inserted the order ID into the title. Now we would say, hi. We put in their first name that we copied. Say, here is your order info. And then you could add in any of those values that are over here, such as the order total, the address that they ordered from, the items they ordered, the IP address they ordered from, anything like that, to create a receipt that you send them out the instant this webhook is called. And then once you have that email created, you could also do an internal notification to let whoever is in the system that needs to know that the order is placed and they need to process the order. You could send an email, app notification, SMS, something like that. Say, hey, this order came through. It needs to be processed, and send that message right from the webhook action as well. A lot of other stuff you could do. Tag the people so that you can segment them as having placed an order, things like that. All right. So that's what you would do with the webhook. And we have that functional now because we just did a test and it came through. Here's the log of what the webhook sent. We can see that on the console or in the terminal as well. Let's go ahead and stop that task, and let's publish this to GitHub and then pull it up in Railway and see how things behave. Like I mentioned, I'm guessing there's probably a stripe adjustment we'll have to make. That tends to happen once we push things out to production. We'll find a stripe integration issue. We will check that out, and we will commit this here and sync those changes, because it is going to pop over here and rebuild inside Railway. And it looks like in that time, this has deployed. So we have the store up here. This is now visible from Railway. And it looks like we have a USB hub in the cart from an earlier push to live. So we're just going to proceed to the checkout here, see what we get, and give it a little bit different information just so we can tell these orders apart. And right here, what I would expect, the Stripe information doesn't populate in. Let's take a look at our payment information issue here. First thing we're going to do is check the console, debugging steps, check the console, and it says that there's a missing value for Stripe API key. Now we know the Stripe API key setup works on development because we just tested that. But this seems to be an issue with pulling in the environment variables. We're going to check and make sure that the variables are there. And we're looking, we have the publishable key here, the Stripe publishable key here, and the secret key. And this is just because it named it two different things in different parts of the app. So we brought over the key twice. And that matches what we have in our local environment file right here. We have those here. By the way, if you're using Railway and you need to put in variables, you can copy the entire list of variables here that you want to put in. Just tell it new variable and paste, and it will actually load all of them in like that. So you have all those in place. I'm going to cancel those changes because I don't need those in there right now. Because we have that error, we're going to copy the console. We're going to bring that over here and do a new conversation and say, do not make changes. I have tested order placing on a deployed version of this site, Railway, it does not pull up the Stripe payment form. It shows this error in the console. You're going to paste in this error. And then we're going to tell it the environment variables are all in place in Railway. Is there anything hard-coded with respect Stripe variables that would cause it to work on dev and not on production? Then we're going to have it use the Smart Code MCP to search. Let's take a look and see what we found out here in our research. There is a hard-coded Stripe publishable key. Next.js is bundling the Stripe publishable key directly in the client-side JavaScript bundle instead of reading it from the environment variable at runtime. Let's take a look here because this was redeployed. And so it has the fresh build on Railway. Look at the Docker file and tell me if it's properly including the build sequence we'd need for this to work correctly on production, and tell it to not make changes there. Let's see what this finds. Here we go. Great. So it is not passing the variables here. Let's have it fix that here and change nothing else. Note that the database is working. So we need the Stripe ones to match. Give it a little context of what is functional right there. I always try to give it context. So when you're working with the AI, if you have something that is a similar functionality in the application that is there and working, then you want to provide that as an example, as basically a blueprint if you can, if you know that the functionality is similar. It makes it a lot quicker for fixing issues because it can follow a blueprint, so to speak. Okay, let's see if this gets us what we need. Okay, and that should be rebuilding here. Let's watch that build process just a little bit. It's a pretty lightweight site. Okay, so this is built. Let's see here if we can go to our checkout. Try it again. Let's just see if we have any console errors so far. Don't. Okay, see if Stripe will show up for us here. And there we go. So it was just not pulling in the environment variables at build time. Seen that happen before on this sort of application. And just a little bit of debugging, we get our Stripe information to pull in. So we are going to load in a bit of card information here. I still have the test keys in here. There's our order. Now let's just go see if this, you know what? This will not have gone to the webhook because I forgot a step. I did not put in this in our environment over here. Just set this to true. And we need the webhook URL. I believe that was the, yes, webhook URL. So we have to redeploy with that. And we'll do one more test order. With that information, let's let that finish loading in. All right, let's do our order again. We're going to buy something else, wireless charging pad, and we will check out there. And we will put in a different address and use that as the shipping address. We will process and put in our card information. and complete our payment and then check to see if that webhook came through. I wonder if we have to go and include that. All right. So we have webhooks built. We have order processing. We have this published to live with Stripe working. Now I'm using the test keys. So you would go in and change out your keys to production keys in the back end there in Railway. So you would change out your secret keys and your publishable keys. Then if you're on Railway, you would go in here and add a custom domain. So your store has a domain. You would pop back into your variables after you added that and add your public site URL. Right now I have it as the Railway generated one, but you would change that out to your whatever URL you set here for the store. And then your store is ready to make or take orders, and you've got webhooks sending the information back to your CRM or wherever you want to send them. And that is a functional e-commerce store vibe coded end to end. There's a lot of stuff I would probably want to do. For example, the payment process, I feel like we could improve that flow a little bit from what the AI built, change some wording, probably change some image display sizes and things like that, little fiddly stuff. But if you're wanting to put together something that is quick to put together and has full e-commerce functionality, you can do that in roughly 4 hours of vibe coding and have a fully functional store and be ready to start selling stuff. Next week will be entirely new as an adventure goes, and hopefully it will be entertaining for lots of folks and less maybe less in the weeds than what we just did. But I think that this is something a lot of people come up with as a thing that they need to do. And this gives us a whole series that can help people do that, even if they couldn't make the call. All right. Well, you all have a good week. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, please like and follow. And if you need help building or finishing your app, click the link in my bio to book a one-on-one Zoom call to take a look at your project.